So I'm here with that Zionist girl. I enjoyed some of your videos. I've been watching them on TikTok, and you're not actually Jewish. I think I saw in some videos you actually said you're Polish, Italian, and actually Catholic. Can you talk a little bit about how you became interested in Zionism and started being that Zionist girl on TikTok?
Yeah, so it's something I grew up with. My whole family is very much so supportive of Israel. My dad's a former Marine and he fought similar terrorist groups overseas in Beirut, Lebanon. So to us, we've always known that Hamas and all of these other terrorist organizations seek to destroy everything that's good in this world. And it's not just something that we need to focus on in regards to Israel. Hamas, Hezbollah, all these other groups are saying very clearly in their speeches that they plan on coming for America next. So, growing up, knowing the kinds of evils that are out there, and then I have a lot of Israeli friends where I grew up was a very Jewish area. So, knowing how important it is to them and seeing the anti Semitism that they faced basically daily. It was just something that's important to me to stand up for and try to help combat some of the misinformation out there.
Most definitely, yeah. Like terrorism and these terroristic groups, like Hamas, they're horrible. And one of my favorite books, is Thomas Friedman's From Beirut to Jerusalem. Mother's Day recently passed. I saw this video you did talking about your mom and her being a person you admire. You mentioned your dad. Can you tell a little bit about like why your mom is special?
My mom is special because she's an extremely strong woman. She raised us to be strong and go after what we want in this world. She's extremely supportive of all of our dreams. For me, obviously, I'm very involved in politics and activism, and she's always been very supportive of using my voice. She's somebody, she moved to New York City completely by herself at 17 years old, worked her way through school. Made her name in the fashion industry with absolutely no connections from a poor farm family. So growing up with that kind of influence, it's just really special to see and to have somebody who you can look up to and know that they're always going to be there for you and they're going to help you get to where you want to be.
Yeah, it's amazing. I follow some pro Palestinians on social media and know someone in real life. And one of the things I've noticed is that they seem uninterested in having conversations, with people like yourself and just hate anyone who considers himself a Zionist. Do you feel anti-Zionism seems like a rebranding of anti-Semitism?
It absolutely is. And they'll sit there and they'll deny that it's anti Semitism. But at the end of the day, you have these horrific things being said by their side. And instead of deplatforming problematic anti Semitic people, they're handing them the microphone. They're saying openly, if you watch their lives, especially if you watch quietly without letting them know you're a Zionist, they'll say horrific things about Jewish people. They idolize a group who quite literally has it in their charter to kill Jewish people, not Zionists, not Israelis, Jewish people. Released Thai hostages talk about how Israelis were treated far worse than they were on the basis of being Jewish. So, at the end of the day, if you want to say that being against Israel has nothing to do with Judaism, you're just lying to yourself.
Most definitely. Uh, it's a lot of evidence that Israel is committing war crimes and a genocide in Gaza and a murder innocent international aid workers, UN staff, journalists, and doctors. How can you be so certain, though, that you're on the right side of history advocating for Zionism?
So, in regards to the evidence of those things happening, a lot of the evidence is questionable at best and coming from the Gaza Ministry of Health, which is run by Hamas. So, to put your trust in what they're saying isn't a credible source in the slightest. On top of the fact that, look, people are going to die, innocent people are going to die. It's a tragedy and it's horrific that it's happening. But there is not a single urban war in history where civilians didn't die as a result. And sadly, Hamas loves when their civilians die, and that's why they're doing everything in their power to cause the most casualties that they can. It's why they're operating out of hospitals and schools and mosques. It's why, despite planning the October 7th massacre for over 2 years, they did nothing to create bomb shelters or evacuate their people. Meanwhile, the first thing Israel did was evacuate people in both Israel and Gaza to keep others safe. They love having these casualty numbers so that they can run to the media and try to perpetuate the idea that they're a victim, which they're absolutely not. Is Israel perfect? Absolutely not. Have they made mistakes in this war? Absolutely, they have. But the difference is when they make mistakes, they own up to it. The two aid vehicles that were hit, for example, right away they came out with an apology. They did a full scale investigation, and it was found out that these vehicles were there past the hours that were agreed upon, and they went during night where Israel wouldn't be able to see the stickers on their vehicle. So why it was a tragedy, it was a tragedy not just because of Israel's mistake, but it was their mistakes as well, and people like to ignore that. Meanwhile, you have Hamas, who is going in and specifically targeting civilian areas, while Israel is doing everything in their power to get civilians out.
Uh, you're a student at the University of Central Florida, but you make some like really valid arguments. You know, one of the videos I really enjoyed where you talk about like this guy who was arrested and he allegedly threatened to shoot and kill 3 Jewish students during a pro-Israel demonstration on campus because
Mhm.
he was tired of seeing them. So like he was arrested, but the charges were dropped, which just seemed like ridiculous. Can you talk a little bit about that situation?
Yeah, it's an absolutely disgusting situation. It happened to three of my best friends on campus. I was in class. I was supposed to go to the memorial to help them set up right after. And I'm getting my phone blown up with text messages from my friends saying, "Don't come. Some guy just threatened to shoot us." So obviously, I don't know what's going on. I go still see them after class. I go to the memorial and ask them what happened. The cops are still there. And essentially, what had happened was they were putting up a memorial that was 1,400 mini Israeli flags in the shape of a Star of David to honor each of the victims of October 7th. This other student, Sifasi, walked up to them, started screaming at them that this is disgusting. They should be ashamed of themselves, that he doesn't want this on campus. My friend Alex told him, "Look, we're here for civil conversation. Keep it civil or just walk away because we're not going to get anything yelling at each other." So at that time, the student did walk away, but he later turned around and came back. And that's when he threatened them, saying, "If this is still here when I get back from the gym, I'm going to shoot it up." He then walked away again. My friends called the police. The police went and found him, and he admitted to the cops that he said this. He said, "Yeah, I said it, but I said it because I'm angry. I have loved ones in Gaza, and I'm tired of seeing the pro Israel stuff on campus." But the people he said this to, one of them was an Israeli exchange student who has family that has died as a result of October 7th as well. And despite the fact there's pro Palestine stuff all over campus, he and none of us have ever threatened or screamed at anybody. So to try to justify it is inexcusable. He was arrested after he admitted to saying it, and then later the charges were dropped. And the reason cited for that was because it was a conditional threat, since he told students that they could leave before he shot it up. So he's giving them the option to leave, making it not a valid threat. On top of the fact the school also still let him graduate. He was not allowed to go on campus. That was really his only punishment, but he still got a diploma.
Yeah, like you talk about like the school basically not protecting Jewish students. Like, do you feel still that's going on?
Yes, I think that the school is starting to do a bit of a better job. But overall, it's been absolutely abysmal. There's been double standards like nothing I've ever seen before. We had another student come up to us when we were doing pro Israel education. He told us that God willing, one day he can join Hamas and kill Jews. Those were his exact words. And we told the police about it on campus. And the police made every excuse under the sun for him, saying, "Well, you waited a few hours before you came and told us. So clearly you couldn't have been that scared. And the student has an accent. So maybe it was a language barrier." And they ended up doing nothing about it. Another great example is posters. So some pro-Israel posters were put up saying "Free the hostages." The school took them down within 24 hours and threatened the students who put them up for hanging up unauthorized flyers, saying that it was criminal mischief. But then after that, the pro-Palestine side, including unauthorized clubs on campus, went around super gluing signs of Free Palestine messages, as well as vandalizing one of the Chabad signs, and it took over 6 months for the school to take these posters down.
That's insane. Like, what do you think could be done? Like, do I feel like, when the like obvious discrimination like that is occurring, like what can make the university and administration change like, their behavior? Because that's clearly not acceptable or right.
I think that it will take more students speaking up. Unfortunately, a lot of the students who I speak with on campus are afraid to. They're afraid of retaliation from both the pro Palestine side and the university. We've been seeing anti Jewish, anti Zionist violence all across America, and people are afraid of being victims of that. Another one of my friends, he had a professor that harassed him over him being Israeli and was saying very anti Semitic things towards him. He reported it to the school. She got basically a slap on the wrist, and then she basically tried to sabotage him on his final by giving him the wrong formula sheet and arguing with him about giving him the correct one. So students are scared that they're going to become targets if they do speak up about this, but for it to change, more people have to speak up because you can't do it alone.
Can you have like a civil discourse about this on campus? Like, is it like places like, where you guys can have civil discourses about it or
Yeah, for sure. We've been very active in doing pro Israel education. And while we've had obviously our fair share of insane people, we've also had some really good conversations. There are people who genuinely don't know anything about this conflict and want to learn. There's people who might disagree with us, but they're able to, at the very least, hold an actual conversation about it. We've definitely had a lot of good discourse on campus.
that's pretty good. What's next for you? Like, are you a student? Like, what are you majoring in? And what do you hope to do like when you graduate?
I major in business. I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to do when I graduate. Obviously, I'm very passionate about politics, so I'd like to do something more in that realm, but we'll see.
Are you Democrat or Republican?
I'm a Republican.
Okay. Definitely. Are you a Trump supporter?
I am.
Definitely. Why do you support Donald Trump?
I support Donald Trump because you can look at the economy, for example, under him versus under Biden. Inflation is out of control. People can't afford to feed their families, and Joe Biden is more interested in talking about his ice cream obsession. This is a man who's quoted saying things such as, "I like when little kids jump on my lap." His son has a laptop that's full of incriminating child porn, and his connections to Ukraine that are quite shady, if you ask me. He's completely turned his back on Israel. In fact, he's doing something that got Trump impeached, where he's trying to attach rules to aid to Israel after it already passed Congress, which Trump got impeached for doing that with Ukraine. So the fact that he's not being impeached, at least not yet, is raising an eyebrow into a double standard of treatment of presidents. He asked Israel for a one sided ceasefire, which is basically asking them to sign their own death certificate. And Biden is really good at talking in a strong manner, but he's an absolute failure when it comes to foreign policy in just about every sense of the word.
Yeah, most definitely. I don't see how like any like reasonable person could like put their support behind Biden at this point. Uh do you feel Trump can win the election?
I do. I think I think that if it's a fair election, Trump will win the election.
Yeah, like what do you think? Like I guess like today like Stormy Daniels testified like against him as far as like the hush money. Do you feel Stormy Daniels is a credible witness, being an adult film star or
I don't think the fact that she's not credible has anything to do with her career choices. I think that victims of things deserve to be heard, whether they work in industries like that or not. The thing that would make her not credible, in my personal opinion, is the fact that she only came out when Trump was running for president.
Yeah.
So the timing would raise an eyebrow of this. And the fact that if you look at the past court cases that Trump has gone through, they haven't been fair in any sense of the word. Judges are not letting credible evidence into court. Certain witnesses are not allowed to speak, or people that have absolutely really nothing to do with the case have been allowed to speak against him. They're timing it where it's trying to interfere with his personal life. For example, he wasn't able to attend his wife's mother's funeral because of the court hearings. So I think that they're really, the whole court system when it comes to Trump and Stormy, it's not credible.
For sure. Like, are there any like local politicians? I've interviewed a number of people like who have run for office from Florida, like Yukong Zhao. Is there any like local politicians that you are fans of their legislation and work they're doing?
I am a huge fan of Corey Mills. He's not in my district, but he's an amazing politician in Florida. He is everything that embodies the American people, in my personal opinion. After October 7th happened, America, the United States, completely turned their backs on Americans who were stuck in Israel going through this horrors with Hamas. And Corey self funded a trip to go there and get Americans out of that situation. He did the same thing with Haiti after America said that they weren't going to go help American citizens trapped there. He's very pro America. He's very pro small business, pro helping families. Just, I love all his work, and he's really somebody whose actions reflects what he says.
Yeah, it's really cool. Like I think like it's important for like, people to do you feel that there's a lot of that in politics where people's like actions don't reflect what they say?
Yes, that I think is 99% of politicians, sadly.
Really? You think it's that high of a percentage? You don't think like, you think it's only maybe like 1% of politicians that are being like authentic and representing their constituents?
Yeah,
That's
I absolutely do. My great grandmother used to say that anyone who gets rich off of public service is a crook, and that's the majority of DC.
that is very true. Like, where a lot of people are like, getting rich. What do you think? Like, would you like to see like, term limits? What do you think would be the solution to solve that?
I'd like to see term limits for sure. I would like to see it that sitting politicians and their families cannot invest in stocks because
Yeah.
there's no reason Nancy Pelosi is outdoing every hedge fund manager on Wall Street. That should be raising a few eyebrows. I think that the politicians need to be reminded that they work for the people, not the other way around. And I think that we need to make it so that not only the wealthy can run for office, because right now it costs so much money to run. And I really don't know what the solution to that is, but I know that we need to do something about that because there's such a theocracy with it, and we need to get a control of the lobbying where these corporations are essentially buying out our government.
Most definitely. I enjoy speaking with you. That Zionist girl. What can people follow you on social media?
They can follow my TikTok at that Zionist girl. My Instagram's the same thing, except it has underscores before and after that Zionist girl. And my Twitter is the exact same username as my TikTok.
For sure. Thank you. I really appreciate you.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me.